Those Were the Days is filmed before a live internet audience.
Welcome to Those Were the Days, the show where we walk down the aisle of TV that's mostly come and gone, look around at all those shows, some we saw, some we didn't, until we find that one nugget of gold that was a show we watched and maybe even loved. We blow the dust off that sucker and give it a look and see if it's still that gold nugget we thought it was, or if it's just an old rock spray painted with cheap gold paint that comes off with our fingers. I'm your host this time around, Audie, and we have a new round of shows to bring you, and this time, it's a more interesting theme. This time, we're going with host's choice. So, we each will be bringing you a show that we just want to talk about that has no connection to anything else whatsoever. We just want to bring it and bring it. So that's what we're doing. Now, before we get to my pick this week, I, of course, need some help to talk about it. So let me introduce to you the rest with our regular cast of characters to talk some TV. First, we have the cat bearer himself, Steven.
That's right. Call me Super Steve. You can tell it's my name because of the S on my t-shirt. Let's go.
Next, we have the greatest warrior in history, Amy.
So as someone in their mid 40s, I hate when things, at the grocery store, like when they rearrange things, or recently my grocery store changed the typeface on all their signs. Really irritating. But what really bothers me is when I get sucked into a portal in the frozen food aisle.
And finally, the wisest Lemurian known, Travis.
So I think we all went through that period, right, where we were the chosen one. I actually had a magical pair of Chuck Taylors that allowed me to have X-ray vision. They were given to me by an anthropomorphic wombat named Percy, and I did have a muscle-bound bodyguard. His name was Glenn.
Glenn. Okay, so if none of those issues gave you any sort of clue as to what we're talking about tonight we're talking about the cartoon Mighty Max. So before we get into it, does anyone else have any connection to Mighty Max at all? Steven?
No.
Nope. That's a big no for me, Audie.
Travis, what about you?
I remember Mighty Max existing. I remember that there was I want to say it was an SNES game that I vaguely remember. I may have even played at some point.
Genesis
and I remember
is what it was on.
Was it?
Yeah, I think so.
And then I remember commercials for the toys, and that a show, I think I remember a show existing, never saw any of it, never had any of the toys, just knew Mighty Max.
Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, and the toys is actually where it started. So the toys came first. Mighty Max started and it's actually a British toy line from where it comes from originally. Basically trying to be the boy version of Polly Pockets.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
Which Polly Pockets, one of the most successful toy lines ever.
Still
ever.
Around.
Yeah,
I think the most stunning thing you just said is that the British had toys, which I had no idea.
Sure.
I thought they just had wooden sticks.
And we also no longer have British listeners. Thanks, Stephen.
Oh, they're fine. They know what what they did.
Yeah. So if you don't know, Polly Pockets was a line for girls that basically was like a compact or makeup or something opened up, and there was a little play place, and Polly did her things there. Mighty Max was the boy version, and that each toy was like a container that looked like some kind of monster or piece of a monster or something, and then it opened up to its own little play set with a little tiny Max figurine and a couple other, usually the bad guys or a monster or something. And so and eventually later on, some of the characters from the cartoon. So like Norman and Virgil didn't show up until later toy lines after the cartoon was produced. But it was super popular as well. So popular that they even got a Happy Meal version with a couple Mighty Max toys. So,
It's
but
kind of
yeah,
cool.
it,
Mhm.
it's wild that the toy line came first, and then they produced the cartoon show.
It's funny that it was a British toy line because the show was very American.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
Um,
it was very American. Was produced in the States and everything. So yeah, um, and it was a syndicated show the entire time. Premiered September 1st, 1993. Ran for 2 seasons with a total of 40 episodes, ending on December 2nd, 1994. So it
okay.
wasn't a very long running show at all. Um, but the show centered on Max. And in the toy line, he originally, they told his story is basically he got this magical baseball cap left to him by his dad. And it
Mm.
gave him powers for whatever. In the show, he gets the baseball cap, and it's known as the Cosmic Cap. Happens to have an M on it, just like Max. And once he puts it on, he realizes it has the power to create portals to different places across time and space. So Max goes on adventures as the prophesied chosen one, also referred to sometimes as the mighty one, who is destined to defeat the ultimate evil, Skullmaster. Now, aiding Max in these adventures is the wise Lemurian Virgil, who's an anthropomorphic bird with knowledge of prophecies and everything about the mighty one. And it's funny, it's a running joke. He's often referred to as a chicken, and he usually retorts back he prefers the term fowl. And then also aiding them in uh, all these adventures is the immortal sword carrying warrior known as Norman. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the episode. But they go on all kinds of adventures all over the world and in space. Like there's some sci-fi stuff
Oh,
as well as other adventure stuff. All to follow the destiny foretold of the mighty one. And it's interesting in looking up stuff about the episodes, like they, because the toy line came first, they actually write some of these episodes around some of the toys and what they are. So like you can go to the Wikipedia and look at an episode and it'll tell you if it's about that specific kind of toy,
Nice.
where it comes from. So now, one other thing, like most cartoons of the 90s, each episode of Mighty Max had an educational epilogue.
It was real good. I was not expecting that.
Mm-hmm.
I was
So,
delighted.
because of all the 90s legislation about, TV and toys and all that, they definitely built that in. So at the end of the episode, we get usually Max spitting facts about the themes or topics that came up in the show itself. Unfortunately, this show isn't known too well, so it's hard to find too much information about the production itself, except that it was produced by Film Roman Entertainment, which produced a butt ton of all kinds of other cartoons out there. They were the company behind the Garfield animated specials and Garfield and Friends. They produced
okay.
The Simpsons for a long while. A lot. Like that's when you could go to Wikipedia and just look at all the stinking cartoons and stuff that they produced, have had their hands in.
And it looked really good. Like the
Yeah.
animation was good.
Mm-hmm. The
Oh, man.
animation was what was it? I think a Vietnamese animation studio that's done all kinds of stuff as well. Another one of those things, like you just look at the credits, you look it up, and you're like, oh, they had their hand in a lot of different cartoons and stuff.
It had a very Don Bluth vibe to it,
Mhm.
which I mean would have been appropriate for the era, but just the style of the characters and Max himself.
Yeah.
And it was some high frame rate animation. I was really impressed
Yeah.
because I didn't know what to expect. And like right out of the gate with the intro, I'm like, oh wow, this is
Oh yeah.
higher production value than I expected it to be. I was kind of
Mhm.
ready for Hanna-Barbera level, phone it in
Yeah.
nonsense.
Yeah.
Well, and especially something that didn't run for that long and we're not
Mhm.
that familiar with. Like you just kind of assume it's going to be some cheap, low budget, poor looking animation. And no, I was blown away with how good it looked. And
Mhm.
not only that, but then this voice cast.
I was
Oh,
about
yeah.
to say the cast of characters, voice actors we have in this is not, voice actors as well as some movie TV actors. So our hero Max is voiced by Rob Paulson, if you couldn't tell by listening.
He's one of
Yeah.
he's like a Jim Cummings. Like you just know him when you hear him.
Mhm. Right.
Mhm.
Speaking
Oh,
of,
yeah.
Jim Cummings was in this episode because he
was.
played our villain Ravendark, and I'm pretty sure he did the dragon too. Nobody is
Yes,
credited
he was
as
also the dragon.
but
Mhm.
it just sounded like him. Virgil, the Lemurian, was voiced by Tony J. Now, you
Mhm.
may not recognize the name, but you've seen and heard him in many, many other things.
Oh, fantastic voice. Just
Mhm.
buttery smooth, deep baritone. Tony J is one of I love voice actors and I'm always like kind of able to pick them out. I've gotten to that point where I've listened to so many of them and he is one just immediately like, "Oh, Tony J. Well, I'm in. You've already got me." So,
Yep. So he's Virgil, and then Norman, our warrior, is voiced by Richard Mall. And if you don't know
mhm.
that name, think of Night Court and Bull.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Bull Shannon.
So, yeah,
Richard Mall did a fair amount of voice acting. Yeah, I
he
loved
really did.
him. We talked a little bit about him in the Batman the Animated Series episode
Yep.
a few
Right.
weeks ago
Hmm.
because he was Harvey and Two-Face, and
Yeah.
he was great in that.
Hmm. So, and he really has a lot of fun with Norman too. Like we said, Jim Cummings voiced Ravendark in this episode, and also our big villain Skullmaster was voiced by none other than Tim Curry,
Tim
Yeah.
Curry.
who eats up everything that's given to him. Good
I
Good.
can
Lord.
imagine. I can imagine. He's barely in this,
Mhm.
Hmm.
which was a little bit disappointing, but
Yeah,
I can just imagine him playing that character and just going ham with it.
he does, and Skullmaster is an overarching character across the series. So we get nuggets of him here and there. There's some episodes that are specifically about him. We get a lot of Tim Curry here and there, so that's good. And then there's other voice actors here and there, notably, of course, but not in this episode. But of course, Frank Welker does a ton of voices for this show,
Sure.
um,
We
and
need to
others.
we
Contractual
need
obligation.
bingo for Frank Welker for when we do our
Yeah.
live Dragon Con. We just have voice actor bingo. Like, does the thing we
I'm-
talk about have Frank Welker in it? And you get a spot.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to like go back over the animated shows that we've covered for this podcast and see like how many of the voice actors have been in multiples of them because we know Frank
Yeah.
Welker, but
Oh,
like
yeah.
Jim
yeah.
Cummings has shown up in a bunch.
Yeah.
Tony J has been in a few. Rob Paulson he was in last week's in The Tick. He was in this.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's true.
Um,
Didn't
like,
Frank Welker?
there's a lot of that.
Frank Welker even crossed over into that. Was it Simon and Simon episode? that he
Yes.
was the
Yes, it
voice
was.
actor?
Yeah.
because he was
Yep.
in it.
Yeah, he's everywhere.
Hmm.
Oh, fantastic.
Um, now, one other notable signature thing of the show, like we talked about, was the animation, and not just how good it was, but the tone and style of it. Like it really was focused on being dark and toned down. Except for Max. Like the thing about Max is he's the bright, shining character in all of it. Um, just interesting that they went with that color palette for him to set him apart as the chosen one. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, a very interesting and muted color palette and color scheme, and the way they animated everything with heavy blacks, heavy shadows. But also, not only just the animation was heavy, the stories were pretty heavy too. Like we'll talk about it. Like there are
Uh-huh.
stories where people do not walk away, which is pretty intense for a kids show. Now it was a kids show, so they didn't show much, but um, like in this episode, heavily implied. You know what's going on.
I was
Kind of
not
thing.
prepared for that in this
Right.
episode at all. Like I did
Mhm.
not see it coming, and holy crap!
Yep. So one other thing I want to mention about the show, if you haven't seen it before, um, like I said, the show only lasted for 2 seasons, 40 episodes. Somehow they knew, like again, there's not much about the production, but there, if you've watched it, you know they knew there was an end point for this show, and they wrote an ending for this show.
Oh, that's good.
Wow.
So, and without giving too much away, basically they ended on a time loop. The last episode's super heavy, and then it ends up back where the first episode starts, but Max retains knowledge of everything.
Oh, cool.
it's
New
like-
Game Plus.
Right. So that's how they ended the series, and it's really cool that they did that. So if you ever do watch the whole thing, it's really interesting to see that and think about that. And then when they started over, or when they get to the end, what they could have done if they had really wanted to play with that.
Yeah.
So
That's kind of cool.
I don't want to alarm anyone, but we can purchase a 100% complete Doom Dragon toy on eBay right now for 75 American dollars.
Oh my gosh.
I
I
just
oh,
I don't, I
Where
don't,
that
I don't wanna
Patreon
alarm
money at?
anyone. It looks
me-
incredible.
yeah, yeah.
and
they
that
have-
was so cool in this like I clocked it right away when Raven Dark walks in to into the cave, and I'm like, oh, the dragon he's in the dragon right
Oh
now.
yeah.
Uh-huh. Yep. All right, so let's get into it. This is Mighty Max Season 1, Episode 5, Let Sleeping Dragons Lie. And like Steven mentioned at the beginning, that intro to the show with that guitar riff, loved it.
Yeah, it
Like,
goes
as soon as I
hard.
saw that,
Good.
like for me, that was super nostalgia bomb. I was just like, oh yeah, I remember this. And again, shows you all the different types of characters and adventures he goes on. So we get that, and then we open up on a mountainside and a bird. And the bird is flying around and flies into this what looks like the stone carving of a dragon head. And as soon as he gets into the mouth and into it, he changes into a man, who we learn is a man called Raven Dark. And so inside the cave, he is talking into a pool to his master, his master Loki,
Sure.
or so he thinks, who is telling him to use a spell to awaken the dragon and release him. And Raven Dark asks, what's in it for him? Will Odin's curse be lifted so that he can leave the cave and be a man again? And of course, Loki promises this. Absolutely, that's what's going to happen. Just get me free. You'll get your humanity back. But then it's revealed to us, the viewer, that Loki is actually the villain Skullmaster.
Dun, dun, dun.
And
I will say at this point, because I had no background whatsoever, I didn't understand that wasn't Loki,
right,
and that anything was wrong. Like I was
Sure.
just like, okay, so Loki looks a little different than I would have guessed, but hey, it's fine.
Mhm.
Hey.
Yeah. So the first episode, Max actually deals with Skullmaster, and there's a big adventure fight, and basically Skullmaster is trapped inside this lava cave area, and he's
Okay.
trying his best throughout the series to try escape that through many means. So this time he's trying to use Norse dude Raven Dark to awake the dragon, open the world, and let him out. So
Okay.
next we come to Max, who is shopping at the local supermarket. And is looking for stuff, and then he hears the intercom and the guy telling people what's going on. This is something that happens a lot in the show. Max gets a random message somehow to go somewhere. So in this one, it's the intercom telling Mighty Max to go to aisle 7 for the frozen foods, which he does, and the hat opens a portal. Somehow it's cold walking into there through the portal.
I really want the spin-off of the people in the grocery store hearing the Mighty Max go to the grocery
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
them living their life for the next 20 minutes
Yeah.
trying to figure
Like,
out
let
what
me tell
just
you,
happened.
I feel like in no way would you get me down aisle 7 after that. I'd be like, you
No.
know what? I didn't. Whatever's down there, I didn't need it. I'm not.
Yeah.
Going.
That, or you want to go and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Just
Because-
see a kid get sucked into the freezer and being like,
Yeah.
you know what? I can't right now.
Mhm.
It's years of therapy.
I'm
to
gonna
get
just
over
go.
that.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't really happen, Amy. Yes, it did. I saw
I saw it.
His hat glowed. I saw his hat glow. So Max walks through the portal and gets pushed out, and there he meets Virgil and Norman. Happy to see him as always. It's funny because Virgil kind of dusts him off with his feather hand, and Max.
That was a good gag.
If you haven't watched this show, this is what Max does. He gets the one-liners throughout the show, and Rob
Mhm.
Paulson just pulls them off like butter. So yeah, Max refers to him as having built-in feather dusters.
Yep.
He's real good.
I love Rob Paulson as Max's voice too, because it's just somewhere in between a kid and an adult. Like just
Yeah.
this good spot where you could believe him as either. And also, like, was it Yakko? Who
Yakko,
he
yeah.
played in Animaniacs? That's mostly what I heard while watching.
Yeah. The whole time I was like, "What?
What happened?
Yeah, his kid voice is very close to his Yakko voice. Because one of the episodes of The Tick that I watched has him as the brainchild or whatever, where he's a villain that has like an enlarged brain inside of a glass dome on his head, but he's a kid, and using a very similar voice to Max.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, The Tick.
So Max gets there. Virgil explains. This is usually what happens. There's just like Virgil knows something's going down because of what's written in the scrolls from who knows what from however long ago.
Sure.
That something's going down and the Mighty One has to stop it. So he knows Raven Dark is casting a spell for some reason and is at the Dragon Cavern of Doom. So they have to go there and stop him. And that's all he knows at this point. So they do. And it's funny when they get to the tops of the cliff finally, they're climbing up, and then Norman immediately starts addressing the Dragon Cavern of Doom, the Doom Dragon. And Max is like, what? And Virgil's like, oh yeah, he fought him before. Norman says yes. They even wrote a song about it. So they go into the cavern to try and find Ravendark, and along the way they find the hammer and helmet of Thor, which Norman goes, "Oh, I thought I lost these."
That was wild to me. I was not expecting to just pick it up like it was nothing.
Right?
Yeah.
Another not a running gag, but a running theme throughout the show is that Norman, throughout history, has been these heroes, which is what Virgil explains to Max, that sometimes the powers that be contract out.
That's really good.
Yeah,
it's a very good line.
So they finally get to Ravendark, who's casting the spell to wake the dragon. Norman, as is Norman's usual way of handling things, immediately runs at him with the hammer, and he just gets magic punched right back.
I want to point out that I thought was really cool that the bad dude was drawing right to left instead of left to right.
And bottom to top.
Yeah, that was super neat to me because it's not characters on the wall you recognize. It's just, animated symbol stuff. Yeah. But I was like, nice touch, animators. Yeah. Well done.
And that's one of those things that they would specifically have to tell the animation team. I remember at SCAD having a professor talking about that because this specific animation group was overseas. And because of that, you would have to specify exactly how characters do stuff. Like you'd have to tell them, hey, this is how you hold a piece of pizza and eat it, because they might have never interacted with pizza the way we have and know how to do that. So stuff like this, like when they do that and do something like that, that's very specific to a culture, that somebody specifically not just made that note. They made that very clear that it needs to be done that way. So good catch on that.
That's awesome. I didn't know that at all. Thanks for the insight. That's cool.
So yes, they're trying to stop Ravendark. They're trying to figure out why would he want to wake the dragon. And Virgil explains the Doom Dragon will open Odin's Rift and tear the world apart, to which Max exclaims, "Oh, I get it. Like have you riven a fjord lately?" Kids, ask your parents about Ford commercials.
Yeah, that was definitely one that got a little bit of an eye roll out of me, but also I was like, all right, yep, I get it.
Yeah. Yep. For a kid's cartoon at the time, not bad.
Yeah.
And then Norman keeps getting punched back with magic, so Max just asks Ravendark what's going on. And then in the middle of the spell, Loki shows up in the little pool and starts asking, hey, why isn't the dragon awake yet? Why haven't I been freed? And Max and Virgil hear the voice and they're like, that sounds familiar. Oh, wait, that's Skullmaster. They try to tell Ravendark that's not Loki. But Ravendark, of course, doesn't listen, and finally wakes the dragon. And they're like, oh, wait, we're inside the dragon. Dragon fire is coming. We need to run. And so they do. They run away, but Max trips. So he just stows away in a chest. And everybody manages to get out. Ravendark does some magic, and he's okay inside there somehow because reasons.
Yeah.
The plot demands it.
Yep. Norman and Virgil get out, and the dragon wakes up, and Norman's immediately like, okay, fight mode, and runs right at the Doom Dragon. Hits him, gets knocked back, and just stands back up. Because this is the other thing about Norman. He's like practically immortal and practically invincible the entire show. So he just gets hit back and just like, oh, whatever. So this huge dragon just knocked him over, and it was like, yeah, sure. To which Virgil was like, I believe you chipped his tooth a little bit. Norman's like, it's only a start. And then the dragon is actually remembers Norman and is looking for him, even calls him out as like, what do they call you now? Lancelot? Little John? And he's like, they call me Norman.
That was such a good delivery too, because he's getting all I'm like getting all set up for him to really say that name. He's like, they call me Norman.
Yeah. Again, Richard Mall doing an excellent job having fun with this. Then we cut to Max still riding that chest inside the dragon still. And then it busts. Apparently the fire's not an issue right now. And he busts right in front of Ravendark. And we basically go back and forth between Norman trying to fight the dragon and Max dealing with Ravendark inside. And Ravendark at this point wants Max because his master Loki, who is Skullmaster, tells him he wants Max's head and hat in a single package. To which Max retorts, good to get that holiday shopping done.
Max definitely had his one-liners.
Oh, yeah, he did.
Yeah.
The kid is a handful in school. That's all I know.
Oh, yeah. We go back and forth to Norman fighting the dragon, Max trying to tell Ravendark it's Skullmaster. Ravendark is like, he's lifted my curse. Don't you see? Everything's going to be fine for me. To which Max is immediately like, oh, he didn't do that. We get a great scene outside of Virgil doing math for Norman to do something for the dragon, because the dragon's been pushing out, trying to finally escape. Norman hits a couple rocks in the side of the mountain, and he's like, what happened? And Virgil's like, back up. And then finally those rocks collapse, huge boulders fall and trap the dragon again, and the dragon is ticked off. And then Max is now inside the dragon, riding a shield to get out. Has another great line about Six Flags over Reykjavik.
Followed by, I think this would be a lot of fun if I wasn't scared.
Right. Exactly. He gets out of the dragon, and so does Ravendark. And Ravendark then immediately realizes, oh, wait, that curse has not been lifted, because he transforms back into a bird. To which Virgil is like, oh, yeah, it's a nice looking bird right there. Nice looking bird.
Easy now.
So Virgil apparently comes up with a plan, talks to Norman. Him and Norman are chatting. And then he and Max and Ravendark, the Raven, decide to leave and with Virgil's plan. And Norman starts counting 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. And then Virgil, Max, and the Raven go to the local supermarket. Local busboy is just like, no pets allowed, which I thought they didn't even try anything to make it localized to Norway or anything like that.
Yeah.
But Max just tells him, these are my seeing eye birds. I can't make a decision without them.
Which is, that's a Odin. That's a good Odin joke.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
It is.
So Virgil takes them again to the frozen food section and is explaining how timing is crucial. So basically, they need to open a portal at the specific time that Norman entices the dragon to where the portal will open so that they can get back inside the dragon. So we see Norman dealing with the dragon, running from him, chasing it, making him getting the dragon to chase him while still counting 75 Mississippi, 76 Mississippi, 76. And then the dragon throws a rock at him and he loses count. And as soon as he does that, Virgil's like, okay, unless Norman's lost count, he's got about 13 seconds. But they managed to time everything right. Max Hat opens the portal, and all three of them get inside the dragon. To which they again see the little pool of Loki, now Skullmaster. Everybody knows it's Skullmaster now. He's like, ha, you can't do anything. I will be freed soon. And Ravendark's like, we could curse the dragon again. And Skullmaster's like, yeah, but that comes with a price. You're not going to do that. And Max is like, price? What price? And Ravendark is like, oh yeah, it will take blood and a soul. And Max is like, no, thank you.
Yeah, we don't have that.
We don't have that.
Sorry, I left all this at home.
Yeah.
Where's my other pants?
To which Ravendark is like, yes, we do. I will do it. And then we get Max being like, what? No. To which Ravendark is like, yes, I messed up. I'm going to do this. And he uses magic to push Max and Virgil out. And we see a little Skullmaster pool there, like, you wouldn't do that. To which Ravendark simply raises a knife and lowers it, and we hear a thud sound, and we know he's done it. Again, children's cartoon, death off screen, but it's definitely, most definitely a death.
I was not ready.
Yeah, I was not ready. I did rewind it. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait, hang on.
So Ravendark sacrifices himself to curse the dragon again, and the dragon immediately knows what's happening because he's feeling it. And then Max and Virgil are outside as the dragon is cursed and turns into a mountain again, this time just on the side of the ocean. And so they all just kind of sit there and think about everything that happened, reflecting on Ravendark and what he did. He paid the price for dealing with evil gods, to which Max is like, those evil gods are worse than insurance salesmen.
Because he has so much experience with insurance sales.
Right. Insurance, I mean, that was the line back then. Insurance salesman.
Yeah.
Which was really funny because my dad was an insurance salesman, so I took a little beef with that.
It put food on the table, Max.
It did. But they still saw the value in Ravendark at the end. Norman's done with his hammer, so he just hurls it into the ocean. Max is like, that's quite the toss. And Virgil was like, oh yeah, Norman's old Icelandic name was the Hurler. And Max is just like, you've got to be kidding me. Seriously? He's having all kinds of fun with that. And that's how the episode itself ended. And then we get the epilogue. And again, this is usually what it was.
Actually.
What was that, Amy?
I learned a lot.
Yeah. So usually this is it. It's Max at a desk, telling you about what happened in the episode, something they were dealing with. This one, he's talking about Norway, giving us info about its geography and everything. And
it's only 4 miles wide in some places.
Yeah. Who knew?
You could walk across it.
Mm-hmm.
That's bonkers.
That's crazy.
That is tells bonkers. Us that it's sometimes known as the land of the midnight sun because there are some parts where the sun never sets for half the year. And then we get another great Max little joke. So, see you today? Is this dinner or breakfast? And then we get the proper ending, and that's how the show ends. Roll credits.
Yeah. So, and cue that awesome music again.
Yep.
Yeah. Good.
So, what did everybody think of Mighty Max? Steven?
If I was 8 and knew this show was a thing, I'd be all about it. Like, this was really up my alley as an 8-year-old kid. And it's funny, I didn't really remember the show at all, but I did remember the dude, the monster looking dude, with the face, the fangs and Skullmaster.
Okay,
we didn't see him in his full, so I wasn't sure that was Skullmaster. But yeah, Skullmaster with fangs and red eyes and everything. I remember that. I remember that. But never watching the show. But I do think I would watch it again. Young Steven would have loved this, and I hate that I missed it. Old Steven's a little past it. Probably wouldn't turn it back on again. But I do appreciate it for sure. And I'm really impressed with the animation and production value. Like, it was really good.
Yeah. Amy, what about you?
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised I missed this one. It would not have been in my wheelhouse, especially then, right? Because it was what we said, 93.
Mm-hmm.
I was 12. That's not where I was as a 12-year-old.
No.
No, I mean, it was pretty good. I'm like obsessed with these toys now.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. No,
know there was a Polly Pocket alternative.
There's a few eBay tabs open right now. I'm like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that guy right there. Yeah, no, I thought it was good, but it is of a time, I would say.
Travis, what about you?
I had a real good time with it. Like I said, I was aware of Mighty Max being a thing, but I never saw the show, and I'm kind of bummed that I missed it because this would have been just one of those fun, like, catch it after school type shows. It's a fun adventure. It's the writing in it is surprisingly good. Like, some of the jokes, there's the 90s era type jokes, but there's also some really clever writing going on in there. The animation was so good, and I mean, I'm just a sucker for a great voice cast, and everybody in it you can tell is having fun. Like, Richard Mall is having fun playing Norman. Tony J is having a great time playing Virgil, and Rob Paulson's doing great with Max. And of course, we just didn't get enough Tim Curry in this. That's if I had one complaint about this episode, there just wasn't enough Tim Curry. Thankfully, like, Jim Cummings was great as well. So no, it was super fun. I would watch it again for sure if it were available somewhere other than YouTube.
Yeah, and we watched it on the YouTube. I happened to find a YouTube that actually did what they called a restoration version of it. So it was about the best quality you could find on YouTube of something like this. And something I find with these shows that a lot of times gets cut off, it still keeps the intro. Like, a lot of them don't. Yeah. So it was nice that it had that too. But yeah, I was all about this. Again, the show was one of those shows that had an overarching story throughout the whole thing, which was really cool, but then had, very specific episodes. And, in trying to do the educational thing, there were a lot of times where they were in specific places and dealt more with the specifics of that place. Like, if they were in Egypt, they were dealing with specific pyramids or something like that. So, but yeah, good. Glad everybody enjoyed it. Glad you liked it.
Super fun.
Yeah, this is, again, one of my favorites. Of course, obviously, I loved Norman as a character because his name was Norman.
Right.
That makes sense.
And I noticed your artwork for this week. You were Norman, and that.
Yeah.
When I first saw the art, because you showed us, a couple days ago or whatever, and I was like, or maybe it was just earlier today, but I was like, oh, cool, yeah, no, and then as I'm watching the episode, I'm like, oh, it makes perfect sense why Audie is that character.
Yeah, I had to do it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that was Mighty Max. Did we get any feedback about this at all?
Nothing in the emails this week. That's thosewerethedayshow@gmail.com. If you want to send us an email, we love our emails and we read them, as you have found out from other people who've sent emails. Do it.
And if you want to email about this one after hearing it, by all means do that, and we'll we'll bring it up the next episode or something, for sure. We love hearing all of your feedback. You can hit us up there at Twitter, because I refuse to call it anything else. Those Days Show. You can come hang out in the Two Dorks Discord, which is where
twodorks.net/Discord.
You can find all our socials, in the show notes and stuff. Actually, I got another thing on Threads from our buddy Christian Scott, just talking about the illustration, great rendition of the characters. It's bringing so much back about the cartoon. So
he did comment on our last, on the tick post also, to say that it was a great episode. Thanks, Corey. And then Also, Mighty Max. Wow, I don't remember a lot about it, but I think the episode you're reviewing has the one line that I still quote from the show. It was a surprisingly great cartoon at the time when that was a rarity, especially for being based on a toy line. Another episode to look forward to.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So that was Mighty Max. Next time on Those Were the Days, Steven, I think, is bringing us the next thing. So, Steven,
snap. Okay.
what you got for us?
Y'all, there are some episodes of television that live forever in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
That I will show anyone and I will enjoy every time. And I have a top list, you know. We're going back to the well for this one. We've been to this show before. It may not surprise you all that we're going to watch an episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show again.
Yay.
This is an episode of this show that, despite all the themes that we have had, I could not figure out where I could squeeze it in. It is one of my all-time favorite episodes of television ever. And that is the Dick Van Dyke Show, Season 4, Episode 27, Never Bathe on a Saturday. It is just... Get yourself some popcorn.
I'm so ready. So excited.
Yeah. I'm sorry we're going back to a show we've done.
Nope.
But I'm also not sorry at all because you're welcome in advance.
Nothing to be sorry about. I knew it was going to be, I didn't know which older show we were going to. I just knew we were going to one of them.
Yeah. Sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. Awesome. Well, tune in next time for that, dear listener and dear YouTube watcher, as we talk about the Dick Van Dyke Show again. And just, yeah, that's going to happen. We've told you that's going to happen, and we look forward to that happening.
Yeah, we do.
More.
Oh, yeah.
It's a miracle I don't submit Golden Girls for pretty much every topic. Like, we should just all be thankful.
I'd accept it. I'd be fine.
Yeah,
Just
you know.
Tune in for our side podcast, the Golden Girdles Rewatch.
Yep.
All right, gang. So until next time, when we talk about the Dick Van Dyke Show, I'm Audie, and for Steven, Amy, and Travis, this has been another episode of Those Were the Days. We'll see you next time for some more TV nostalgia.
Bye.